This is Jason Record with SUSE Technical Support. Today we're going to be talking about a basic health check for disk space. Sometimes when we have a problem with the server or things aren't going quite right, we sometimes overlook the obvious, and running out of disk space is one of those obvious things we can overlook. So we're going to see just some basic ways on how to check for disk space. If you get a support config and you run the support config analysis tool against it, the SCA tool will include in the SCA report a basic health check of the server, and will look for your file systems with the most disk space. Look for another video on how to understand the SCA tool and report and the support config. So on this server, we've reported some issues, and perhaps we've looked at a support config and found that we're out of disk space. So the first thing we want to do is use the df command to see where we're running out of space. Now there are certain directories. The system disk is particularly vulnerable. If we run out of disk space on the system disk, which some really unpredictable behavior can occur. So you never want to run out of space on root, home, or temp, or var. Those are some of the places that keep temporary files, and can applications that are trying to write to that may have issues in running when we run out of space there. And obviously if we run out of space on root, the system itself can become unstable. So in this case we see that our root file system has reached 95% capacity. And 95% may or may not be an issue. In the SCA report it'll be flagged as critical, encouraging you to take a look at it to see what needs to be done. I mean, if you had 95% disk space consumed, but you still had a terabyte of free disk space, then you probably don't need to worry about it. But in our case, we only have 480 megabytes left on our root file system, which is getting really, really low. So we need to free up some space. So how could we find out where that space is being taken? So one way to do this is with the find command. Now, if it's a data drive and you happen to know that there's a data drive that's running out of space, you can just go onto that drive and remove files. If it's the system disk, then we need to look for them in other ways. Now, before we do a find, if you run out of space on root and your system has become unstable, really the best way to address freeing up space on root is to boot into rescue mode and mount the file systems and free up space that way, because the system probably will not allow you to try and free up space while it's running and out of disk space. So we're going to look for basically, we're going to look for files that are of a particular size. In this case, we're going to look for any files that are greater than 500 megs, starting at the root. Now we see that we didn't find any. So perhaps this space that's being consumed is being consumed by quite a bit smaller files. So another good tool is DU, or a disk, kind of a disk summary. We'll do a DU-S to summarize off of root and check all files under root, and then we pipe that to sort, numeric sort is with the -n. Let's see. Let's do sudo du. Maybe that'll help out. So we'll ignore the message there, and here we see that the very bottom one is where /var is where all the space seems to be consumed. So if we change to /var, we see we have quite a bit of directories. So we're going to repeat the command. du-s. This time we're going to include var, and we'll sort on that. Now we see that the overwhelming amount of disk space is being consumed in var cache. So we'll go to var cache. We don't see any files in here, so we're going to repeat the sudo command, sudo du-s. This time we're going to include var cache and all files under var cache. We'll sort it so it's easier to see. Now we find that the overwhelming amount of space is being consumed in /data, or in data under var cache. Okay, here we found a lot of files. These look like data files. It's uncertain. They don't look like system files, so you would want to double check with the system administrator to see if these files are aware of these files and if they can be cleaned up. In this case, these are application files, and we would be concerned with that application and see if there's either adds disk space to /var, or in this case, we can just simply remove them. So we'll remove all those files and then recheck, and now we're at 13% on root instead of 95%, and we have 7.4 gig available. So that's how we check the disk space. Bottom line, don't run out of disk space.